Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 2 of my channel Beyond the Spotlight, where I like to talk about what it's like being an actor living in New York City. And today, as my guest, we have
Laura Clinton.
Laura. Please tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you do, your experience.
Totally. So I got my start in New York City a decade ago because I'm old. And I moved here for college. I went to Marymount Manhattan. Rest in peace, Marymount. It just this year was acquired by Northeastern, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, which is cool for the school,
Okay.
but a bummer for people like me who went to it. But yeah, I went to college in New York to study theater, and I studied primarily directing and production/stage management. And I really never considered myself an actor until I was taking acting classes in college and kind of just fell in love with it in a way I didn't realize was in me. Like, I always appreciated acting, but I always kind of felt really awkward doing it and like really uncomfortable with kind of everybody looking at me. And then it was in those sort of smaller groups and a really empowering group of like other 18-year-olds who had moved to New York to do this crazy thing. It's like you're in this group of other insane people, and like it really brings something out of you and it makes it feel okay and safe. And that, I think, really helped me come out of my shell as a person in a huge way.
It's a really vulnerable thing to do.
Totally.
So, yeah.
I think for anybody, like, acting in any way is just great life skills. It gives you so much, and it's so, I think, healing in so many ways for so many people. Just the literal experience of, like, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to embody that person and like who they are, what drives them, what makes them make the decisions they do. So all this to say, I am a creative person that still lives in New York City 10 years later. And I mainly now, I work a sort of typical day job, but I also run a theater company with a couple of my very close friends. And we do a lot of wacky Shakespeare productions all over the city, but mostly a lot of the time in Bushwick. And I have a life goal of getting through all 37 Shakespeare plays, and I just finished number 10. Thank you.
That's huge. That's huge. So let's get into it. So can you tell me a little bit about the process of how you cast your actors? So like, do you use Backstage, Actors Access, Playbill, Friends?
Totally. A lot of it is word of mouth through my friends, through other people I meet just like on other projects or through other people. I'm always looking for people. If you're listening to this and you're an actor, call me. I'm always looking for people. I think that's also a big part of, especially in a city like New York, connecting with other creative people and seeing what you can do together and create together is like a huge joy of just being able to live in an environment like this. And so yeah, a lot of it right now comes through my friends. We have in the past, we've done Backstage, but I will be honest, like, from the other side, when you put up a posting on a place like Backstage or Playbill, it can be really overwhelming the amount of responses you get because there's so many people in the city trying to make it as an actor, and you get so much interest. And honestly, for me, it was a little overwhelming in the sense that I was like, I don't feel like deserving of all these people's time. It's like, these are people who like are trying to make their living as an actor, and I'm just putting on these little productions with my friends. And so I struggle a little bit with like big casting platforms like that, especially because a lot of the work that I do is for the joy of it and it's unpaid, and I always want to respect the professional platforms and the people who are trying to make a professional living.
Would you say that it's easier also doing it like through word of mouth, because then you already know, like, oh, okay, I trust this person, I trust their...
Trust is a huge part of it. I will say, like, I have done one show that I cast mostly on Backstage, and to this day it is like, it was a huge mutiny that happened like during the production process. And I'm also not going to say it was undeserved. Like, I'm going to say that I, as a producer and as a director, should have been doing a lot of things differently at that time. But the way that I immediately sort of lost the trust of the room always stuck with me. And I think that even in other projects where, we all make mistakes, like, nobody's perfect. I'm going to be unprepared from time to time, hopefully less and less as I get older. But, it just happens. And when you're working with people you already know and that have been through a creative process with you before, that trust is so invaluable. They really give you the benefit of the doubt. And it is also, like you said, a really vulnerable process to go and perform. And so if you are if you are working with someone you don't know and you don't have full faith in their vision or their process, that's like a worst nightmare scenario. It's like,
my God.
you know, like everyone has
You're right.
you get up on
You're
stage
right.
and you don't know your lines, or it's like you feel like you're like in your underwear in front of everyone. And
No,
it's
you're
just,
so right.
oh,
Like
God.
trust is one of the biggest things. Like trust with your cast members, your stage manager, your director, your like everyone. Like
Yeah.
it's always like the best feeling when we are on good terms with everyone. Like you know that their director knows what they're doing. You know, you have the trust in them that they know how to direct you best to get the best out of you.
It brings out the best in everybody.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
So, that being said, have you ever had an experience where you kind of partnered up with a friend or you cast a friend and at first it was all like, oh my God, yes, we're besties, you know, let's do this together. And then you just completely butt heads and then you were like, okay, you know what? I'm never doing this ever again.
Totally,
Yes?
totally. And I won't name the friend because actually I don't know if they would say the same. But like, I will say I have so much respect and love for them as a friend, as a creative, as a fellow artist.
Yes.
And it was one of those things where I brought them into this process in one role, and then they just had a lot of opinions, and it's like they were kind of steamrolling me, and I'm very collaborative, very open. Some could say a pushover at times, where, you know, it's like we would run into these situations where I would think a scene should go one way and they thought it should go another, and
you couldn't agree on like,
and that also, the trust in the room broke down because it's like, okay, who's in charge here? Like, you know, she's telling me one thing, they're telling me another, and who should I be listening to? It creates a lot of conflict for, I think, everybody involved. But that being said, you know, I've had a lot of experiences where it's been really wonderful working with friends. And you have a great time and you have a lot of fun together. I think clear boundaries, clear roles is a big part of it. You know, like I have my job, you have your job. Like one of my best friends to this day, she is sort of like the financial director of my theater company. And she's going to run the budget. And we sort of like, we have these almost like planned fights where it's like, you know, a perfect example, we did a production of Hamlet in 2016 and we were doing the show, like one performance at 7:00, one at like 8:30. And so it was sort of like a 10-minute turnaround in between shows. So obviously we don't have time. And the vision also was like, I wanted everyone wearing all white and getting bloodier and bloodier as the show went on, because it's only, you know, like an hour and 15-minute show, the way we had cut it. And so we wanted to do that one performance, and I was like, we are going to need budget to buy everyone a second pair of pants. Like, we need to have 2 outfits for everybody. And I think that that's something we should have to pay for so that people don't lose money doing the show. And she was like, so you want me to buy 14 pairs of white pants? Ooh. And I was like, yeah. Forgive us, like next, like, and she's like, we're not doing that. And so it's like, you know, those kinds of things come up, I think, in every single production where it's like, it's my job to fight for the creative vision of the project. It's her job to fight for our financial future that I am desperate to ruin. And so, like, you know, it's like those things happen all the time. And we know that eventually, I think in that example, I somehow just convinced everyone in the show to buy their own second pair of white pants, just bring an extra set. And God bless them, they all trusted me in that process, and they believed in it, and they wanted it to be cool, and they liked the idea of, you know, coming out in white and getting bloodier and bloodier. And so they bought into it, and it was at no extra cost to the company, and our friendship is still intact. And the show looked amazing. It was really fun. It was really cool.
I think like a big thing for me about like directors and like co-directors is like any type of like argument or like kind of a talk that has to be talked out should happen behind closed doors, never in front of 100%. Because I remember when I co-directed a show with my friend Umbrina, was called Beneath the Banyan Tree. And, you know, she directed the whole thing and she kind of wrote it. And she asked me, like, would you be willing to co-direct? And I was like, oh my God, yes, of course. And we were really good friends. So part of me was like, oh, this is so exciting. I hope we don't step on each other's toes.
It's like foreshadowing.
And the thing is, we never did.
Really?
We never did. We were so in sync with what we wanted, like what she wanted and what I wanted. And our roles were very clear because I was also acting in the show Beneath the Banyan Tree. I have kind of my own monologue. So she made it very clear that, okay, when you are doing your monologue, I'm the director.
Yeah.
Right? Because you need someone to direct it that has like open eyes or whatever, like a whole
someone to give you feedback
someone
and
to give me
receive
feedback.
what you're
Exactly.
doing.
So we never stepped on each other's toes. It worked out so great. Everyone in the cast, like, they trusted us, and they really, like, they always came to us when they had like issues, when they were I don't know, feeling like a little nervous or anything. Like, they really trusted us.
There's a lot of self-awareness that is required to work, especially with people you're close with. You need to be able to say, I'm acting in this scene, I need to be an actor, and you need to be my director. And in other situations, switch it off the way that feels right. But it's so hard, I think, for all of us to have that level of self-awareness.
What would you say is one of the most challenging parts about being a director?
Ooh, I think having faith in your own vision at times can be really tricky, because I think a part of an actor's job at times is to kind of poke holes in it and to say, like, this doesn't make sense. Okay, like, you're building this world and you are telling me to go left, and now in this moment I need to go right. How do I get there? And your job as the director is hopefully to kind of create the framework where they can make those connections and get there. But it's not a perfect science. And I think that's the beauty of a collaborative art form, is like, I can put you in a scene and you can say, like, okay, how do I get here? Here's what we've established in this world so far. If I make this choice, it doesn't make sense. And then eventually you find what does make sense. And so I think that's really challenging. I think also a big part of it is being the most prepared person in the room a lot of the time. And I underestimated that, I think, when I was younger and when I was doing these shows really for the first time. I would get these like huge visions and dreams of what I wanted it to be and wanted it to look like. But then who's going to do the paperwork? You know, like, it's like, who's going to figure out, like, okay, you want this big musical number with feather boas. How many feather boas do you need? What color, what kind of feathers? Where are you going to buy them? Like, where are you storing them during rehearsal? What date do you need them by? That's a ton of work. And, you know, ideally in a production, you have a lot of people tackling different facets of that. But I think especially when you're young and you're starting out, 99% of that work is on you. And you should be excited by that. Like, that's, you know, cool. Like, to take those visions and that dream and like bring it to reality.
Would you say that, like, do you face any challenges as an actor because you have the mindset of a producer, director, writer?
All the time.
And what kind?
I sometimes, and you know, I also will say we're our own worst critics. I often feel like I'm the worst actor in the room because I'm trying to embody these other parts of the production.
So you wear like several hats.
Yeah, and for me, my natural gear shift and my ultimate love is directing, and I love building that world, and I love like scaffolding all of that. But I also love acting, and I love getting into like the individual journey of a character and going through that arc and like finding that. I think that's so beautiful. And I love also that when you're producing your own theater, you can do both because you said so. You know, it's like, I'm doing this show, I want to star in it, and I want to direct it. Why not? You know, like, sure, there's no rules. And so I put myself in those positions all the time. And it's really tricky because you want to play off the other actors. And then you also need to be removed enough to sort of see what you're doing on stage. And I struggle with that a lot, where I default back into directing mode. And then sometimes it feels like I'm like a week out from the show and I'm like, oh yeah, I need to be an actor. And like getting myself to stay backstage during a run through is the hardest thing when I'm trying to do both at the same time. Like, because all I want to do is like go out from backstage and watch the show and see what's happening. But at a certain point you have to say, like, no, like, you're an actor now. You need to stay in this world.
You can't control that.
Yeah, like it's out of your hands. Like, hopefully you've done the work. Everyone is on the same page, and it's going to go the way it's going to go. And you need to focus on this part of your job. And it's, for me, it's really hard to do that.
That's crazy, because for me, so I've done a lot of acting, but I've also directed and written. For me, it's kind of the opposite. When I just get to act, like, okay, I've been cast for this short film or whatever, and you're just actor, I'm like, woo, great. I can just put my feet up. I just have to focus on me. I have to focus on my character, my being, whatever. Like, that's it. Whereas when I was doing my short film Flynn, when I was the director and I was acting in it, and I was kind of in charge of the costumes and like what people are wearing, I was all over the place.
Yeah.
And that was tough.
Yeah,
I liked
it's
it.
like you'll be in the middle of a scene and you're like, what shoes is she gonna wear? And
No, like
no,
I was literally in the middle of the scene at one point, and I was like doing my thing, and I was like, oh my god, why is no one blocking that sunlight? Like, where is the reflector? And they're like, oh shit, right? And I'm like, come on, people, come on! Like, I'm in the scene, like,
yeah,
you know, like you have to be like doing everything, and then the whole point of acting is that like you have to kind of like, you know what they say, like leave your baggage at the door.
Mm-hmm.
But my baggage was just with me constantly 24/7, and I'm trying to like be in the moment. I'm trying to like work off of my partner, but at the same time, I'm like, is the mic like in the right place? Is the camera like does it have the right lens? Is the like did someone prepare, I don't know, the prop that has to be over there?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
yeah, other people hopefully should be able to take some of that on for you. It's like I think of it all as like a big energetic exchange, almost like netting, where like if all of our nets are crossing with each other, we can lift something.
Right.
But if I'm just trying to do everything myself, my one energy light is not going to be able to lift anything by itself. Like we need to cross over.
Also, sometimes people are just lazy. And unless you're like behind them 24/7, like telling them like, don't forget to do this, don't forget to iron the costumes, like don't forget to do the mic, like make sure not to like play with the mic thing because it's gonna hear in the thing, and it's like unless you're like behind them 24/7, it's not gonna get done.
Sure.
Because people do get lazy, unfortunately. So you said that you have a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Right? And you're doing this acting stuff. So how do you like juggle it? How do you plan it? How do you do all that?
I mean, I want to say it's hard. It's not. The good thing I think about having kind of set like corporate hours is like they're set. Like I know what time I'm going to be there, and like it changes once in a while. Usually, I get enough notice of when something like that's going to happen, so it makes life very plannable. It's like it's kind of a glass half full situation where it's like you can look at it as like, oh my gosh, I'm working 40 hours a week. What do I have time for? It's like, oh, I'm done with work at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. What am I going to do from 7 to 10? Like, there's some room there to, you know, like cut a script, watch a play, like talk to a friend, like you can do some serious damage in those 3 hours.
Stuff.
Totally. And you don't always have the energy to do it. But I think that's also where like being realistic about your own pace. Like there's a couple quotes that I really like. One is everyone's an artist until the rent is due, which that's not to disparage professional artists, because I think that's, you know, incredible when someone's able to make their living through creativity. But at the same time, like I think it just points towards like we all have like an inner artist. Like I also say this all the time. Artist isn't a job, it's a personality type. Like I've met so many people at my corporate job that I would say are artistes, you know, and they maybe wouldn't even self-identify that way. Like, but it's like you just see something in them where like you just know that they're like feeling on a deeper level. They're sensitive, you know, and like you love to find your sensitive people. They're all over the place, and like so it's like when you think about it that way, like there's a ton of opportunity here, and like if you know what your life looks like, if you have that self-awareness, like you can fill in like other places and say like, okay, I don't have time to, you know, audition from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. That's fine. But like, I can rehearse with my friends from 7 to 10. Like that's my prerogative. That's what I want to do. And there's also like another thing that my friend's dad, who's a theater professor, said to me once. Shout out Poppy Ginsburg. He once told me, theater is a mistress, not a wife. And
interesting.
I kind of love that, because it's like, if you really think about, if you track the metaphor for a minute, like, it's like, I do sort of sometimes think of that as like my job is like, it's a wife. It keeps my home for me. And it like, you know, it provides so much. There's so much prosperity. I love her so much. Like she's my baby. She's my rock.
Right.
But on the side, like I have this incredible other person who's like this gorgeous, sexy, like exciting,
Uh-huh.
fabulous person that I love to like go out with and like
And you
be
can
out with
play
and like
with
play
and,
with
like,
and like and just
okay.
bring all the like excitement and the joy. And it's like,
Yeah.
and there's a little bit of like yin yang. Like it's like my corporate job at times can be very exciting and very sexy. And like,
Yeah.
you know, then at times like creative stuff, like when you're doing
Right.
like spreadsheets for how many feather boas you need, like that's boring. Like you know, like
No,
there's
you're
a
right,
little
you're
bit
right.
in each. So
Yeah.
I also sometimes think of it as like it is a great privilege to have both a mistress and a wife, and I would hate to lose them, you know. So it's like you don't get to have a mistress if you're not good to your wife. They both can mean different things to you, and you can love them in different ways.
Right.
And I think honestly, like I think that having a stable job makes me a better artist.
Okay.
A lot of the time, it makes me
Right.
more selective in what I choose to do because I don't have as much free time to just do any project I want.
You're also, I feel like you're not desperate.
Yeah, you're not. It's when I was trying to make my living in theater, I was miserable personally. Like, and it
Right.
works for a lot of people, but I was working on shows I didn't believe in. I was doing roles that weren't as exciting to me, and like, it just, you know, it was a really draining feeling
Right.
to like go to rehearsals and like that's not how it should feel. Like I think
I
that
agree,
the
yeah.
like the reason we went into this is because
Right.
it was fun and because we
Yeah.
loved it and it made us light up
Yeah.
inside.
I think that's really important what you mentioned about like dimming your light. A lot of people need to understand that like just because you get a role and just because it's paid does not mean you should take it.
Yes.
I think it's really important to read the script, know what you're getting yourself into, read the contract if there is a contract, know what they're kind of expecting of you, the hours are. If you don't like the story, if you don't like the dialogue, if you just feel in your gut that you're not gonna have fun doing this, then don't do it.
Yeah.
It's really not worth it. I actually recently I turned down a job. It was for a short film and it was actually paid really well, but I completely turned it down because they were just asking to like crazy shit of me, and it was like a whole scene. It was very inappropriate. And I asked them, I was like, is there going to be an intimacy choreographer on set? And they were like, no. So I was like, done.
Yeah.
I'm not doing
Yeah,
this.
and good for you.
And that's also good because, you know, then then you have to bring kind of your safety into it.
Yeah.
Like, am I going to be safe during this production?
Yeah.
So yeah, always know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah. I also firmly believe that like saying no is so powerful. I think saying no is like your way of communicating with the universe, like what you're willing to accept. And
Exactly.
I think this is where like people pleasing in culture is just like such a problem, especially for women,
Right.
where it's like we want everyone else to be happy, and it's like, okay, but if that comes at the expense of my own happiness, we are all going to be unhappy at the end of the day. It's not worth it for anybody.
It's really not. So, have you ever had like any scenes in your shows where it was like intimate and you needed to hire an intimacy choreographer or anything like that?
I will say we've had scenes that were intimate and that we should have hired an intimacy coordinator for. And I will say, I've been doing this for like about 10 years, so it wasn't. I think 10 years ago it was not as much a part of the culture or the conversation. I would say that's necessary. And it's crazy. I remember I was doing my college internship the summer of the Me Too movement, and it's like you felt this shift. It was like we were sitting in the office and all of a sudden like this huge story broke, and it's like you just knew like it was not going to be the same again in this industry. And I have definitely seen in the past few years like what I feel is really positive change. And I hope and I believe that we're heading more in a direction of just more, I think, like clear communication, clear boundaries, and I think empowering people to really feel in control of a creative process. And that is really important. Like, you know, I would say that at this point in my life, like I would also say I'm less interested in those like types of scenes just because I think there's more interesting things out there, you know? Like I think sometimes, and this is a total oversimplification, but at times I think that like those kinds of scenes are used to like make a story seem more interesting than it necessarily is.
Right.
At least when they're done gratuitously. And then there are also, I think, other times where it's, you know, really beautiful and necessary to the story. But yeah, I think And I also think there's a lot of like really fun ways to do and say sexy things without like going there. And that's
Without
like
having to like strip or
100%,
like showing your
like,
body. You can be completely covered up and
Yeah.
still give off a sexy vibe.
Totally. I love a
Right.
good like I love a good sexy tango. Like that makes no sense in the
Yeah.
context of the story, but you get it. Like it's
No,
like
yeah.
you know, like there's have we all forgotten what metaphors are sometimes?
No, exactly.
Like it's like I think about
like,
that kind of thing.
You don't
like,
have to spell it out.
Exactly. Like your audience
know?
is smart. Like they want to be in this with
Exactly.
you. Like give them something to think about where they can be like, oh.
Exactly.
Like, what
And
does
I
that
think
mean?
I think that's what to me makes a story go from like good to great, or like a theater show or a short film, any type of film, is when it's not overly narrated and
Yeah.
it's not like explained so much.
I think for
When they
like
let
when
you know,
I'm
the
an audience member, that is like the number one thing I think I really like notice and look for is like how many questions I'm asking myself. And it's almost like it's kind of like a meme, like where it's like, oh, like you know, like your girlfriend asking you a million questions when you watch a movie, and it's like I'm seeing it for the first time too, Katie. Like you know,
Right,
and it's like,
yeah.
but like it's like that's almost how I feel sometimes when I'm watching a really good show, where I'm like, who is that? Where are they going? Well, what is this? Where are they now? And it's like, and when I catch myself doing that, I'm like, ooh. Okay, something's happening here. Like this is interesting.
You're in it. You're engaged.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Whereas you know, like I like I'm gonna be a hater for a second. I saw The Great Gatsby musical, and I love The Great Gatsby book, and like the production, of course, is stunning. Like there's beautiful costumes, and the actors are great. But like personally, I'm watching it, and it's like I felt like. New York. Like, it's like as I was watching it, I almost felt like it was like they were just like spelling everything out, where they were just like, he's really rich, but he's still in love with her. Like, and it's like those, like, and I was a little bit like, okay, yeah, like we get it. That. Like, and and it's also like I mean, it's Gatsby, like, and it's you know, it's supposed to be a big thing. So maybe this is just kind of like a difference in taste or a difference in opinion, but like. I left at intermission. I was like, nah, like this is not for me. Like
I've never left a Broadway show like during intermission. Never.
My favorite. This is gonna make me sound like such a jerk, but I love to say it. I have fallen asleep in more Broadway shows than most people will ever see in their life.
That's crazy.
And that's just more a commentary that I've seen a lot of shows. It's not like that I don't fall asleep in them that much. I think it's only happened a couple times, but like that's more than some people will see in their life.
Look, it happens.
No, I usually try to stick it out through it, but I also will say I've had people leave my shows at intermission, and like you know what, respect. Hey, like if it's not making you happy, don't watch it. And I think also like that is I think valuable feedback. Like as a director and as a performer, like when you see someone leave an intermission, you're like, all right, I did a bad job. I'm gonna do a better job next time. It's gonna be way better.
If you had the chance to co-direct with any director, it could be famous, infamous, they could be even dead.
Oh God.
Who would you pick? Or who would you want to have the honor to work with?
I can't say it because it's actually not an honor. I'm just kidding. It's it is you.
Oh, no, oh my God. I knew it.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, you know what I actually think like would be so fun? I think it'd be so fun to work with Matt Damon. Like, and I don't know why that was like the first person that popped in my head.
For like a movie?
Like, yeah, if I like, because I also know really nothing about directing film because I'm such a theater buff, and like I love film in its own way. I think it's like so incredible. I definitely have a lot of opinions when I see movies. But yeah, I don't know why. I'm gonna run with that. It's gonna be Matt Damon for reasons unbeknownst to me. All right, for reasons to be revealed to even myself. Like,
no, I like that answer. It's interesting. It's spontaneous. Whatever.
It's Matt Damon.
Any advice or tips for, I don't know, anyone wanting to start out to be an actor? Perhaps?
I think my greatest advice to anybody that wants to do anything creative is to just empower yourself. Okay. Do it yourself, you know? And I think everyone's capable of doing that, and whatever that means to you, even if it just means like inviting 5 friends over to your house to watch you perform a monologue. Like, why not? Get a bottle of wine, it'll be fun.
I like that idea. Actually, I might steal that. First, let's come over next week.
I'm around.
Thank you so much for watching. like and subscribe. Thank you so much to my guest.
Thank you.
Laura Clinton.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for being here. And have a great day.